So I heard that Siralim Ultimate is basically like the Bloodborne version of Pokemon. And honestly, nothing could be further from the truth. I was surprised by the accessibility in this game, but if I'm being honest, I do understand the comparison and why someone would make that analogy, even though it's completely wrong. I'm Nima. Today, let's talk about Siralim Ultimate, and if this is a good game for you, or if it's something you should pass on. But before we get into that, I do have to ask you guys to please hit that like and subscribe button. I really want to get to 1,000 at some point in the near future, but even more importantly, if you do not hit those buttons, Santa won't deliver presents. Now listen, that's not me. I didn't make up the rules, I have nothing to do with it. This is all on the big red guy. But if you don't want to ruin a bunch of children's lives forever, then you know what to do. Anyway guys, back to Siralim Ultimate. So again, this is one of those games that was really marketed as Pokemon on steroids, if you will. Like, for instance, there's over 1,200 different monsters you can use, you can create, you can fuse them together, you can summon different monsters. Across the board, just a ton more variety. It's also one that has over 30 biomes, and each biome has different realms that you can explore. But the whole comparison to this being this super hard Pokemon game is true but wrong. Confusing manners. For instance, for one, you don't really catch any of these monsters, you summon them. That's, completely different right there. But aside from that, you also can just turn down the difficulty and just breeze through the game if you want. This game allows for that because I think they understand that even though winning is fun, the strategy in this game can be really compelling and it can really guide you to understand exactly what this game offers. Like, it's so much more than just the story. It's so much more than going and beating bad guys. There's an element of strategy to this game that really makes you want to build up this like super team that not only reacts to each other's buffs and debuffs, but also works in a synergistic manner where they're healing each other, where you're doing 200, 300% damage because you put an affliction on an enemy. With each member of your team working in unison to create this super badass team. That's kind of what this game is more about. Yeah, you can put it on very easy and just kind of plow through it, I guess, if you want to. I didn't do that, but I did make the mistake of falling for the statistics. Looking at the health, the attack, the intelligence, things like that, and feeling like, oh, okay, well, now I got a team that can go in and fight. Well, that works early on. Like, after the first boss, you feel pretty confident in the fact that, well, there's no difference between this and any other game I've played. I don't know what people are talking about. Then you reach the second boss. And in the second boss, you essentially really have to have everything down pat if you're going to play on any sort of difficult level. Again, you can put on very easy and just blast through him, but that's not really the fun. You see, because this brick wall that made me stop also made me reanalyze the game a little bit and to understand why there's 1,200 monsters, to understand why I want to be looking at the traits, why I want to look at the artifacts that I'm giving them and upgrading them with my blacksmith. And yes, that's right, you can make them swords, helms, stabs, whatever, and then you can upgrade the weapons or armor to gain different bonuses and to be able to equip different gems that'll give them different power-ups, different bonuses, and even different traits towards the end. Now, you might want to ask what a trait is. Well, each monster does have a trait, and it's something they're born with. In all of them, have some sort of different ability. For instance, some will have the ability to summon direwolves as soon as they get out on the battlefield. This helps because this basically stacks your attack. There are some that will instantly cause some sort of affliction whenever they attack. Or there's some really helpful ones as well that will resurrect dead teammates after they attack. There's over 1,200 of them, so I'm not going to go through all of them. But what I will say is this is very important to pay attention to because each one can work off of each other. For instance, if you have, let's say, one monster that does 200 damage on an afflicted enemy, then you can also find a monster that every time they attack, they grant an affliction to the enemy. Well, these two would work really well together, right? You see, it's that kind of team building that you want to focus on this game. Now, I'm not a master or anything of it. I'm still learning myself. But this is just why this game gets recognized as being incredibly in-depth and being very difficult, honestly, because it's this sort of stuff that you have to master, or I shouldn't say master, it's this sort of stuff that you have to understand to be able to progress further in the game, again, unless you want to just play on very easy. Which, speaking of that, why would you want to learn the strategy? Why would you want to do all that? Because it's sort of in a way like Diablo, where it's not about beating the game. Don't get me wrong, the story is interesting-ish. It's very simple. Basically, you're a god. There are 30 other gods. Again, this is where the 30 biomes are introduced, because you gotta go visit them. And there's one god who basically gets a hold of something called the Nether Stone, and with this he can basically control the whole world, and it's all about domination and him trying to destroy everything and claim everything, and yeah, it's pretty generic, right? And that's what I'm saying, like, yeah, you could go through the game and play the story, or you could get everything else out of this game, which is really what the game is about. Not to say that at some point the story doesn't get a little bit more interesting, because it does, and the story is there to give you at least a little bit of motivation to keep going, but it's all the other things, I think, it's the spells, there's an enchanter who will give you different spells, there is the ability to build up your castle, there's all sorts of different expansions that really just open up the world, and not to mention that, but also just the 1,200 or some different monsters that you can kind of mix and match with, and study to understand which one is going to be the best for you and your team. Now, graphically, this game is really simple. Super Nintendo graphics with some decent music. And this game was made by one guy. Just one dude who went through all of this. And so you can tell where he put a lot of his energy and his time, most of it being in the monsters and their traits and the strategy that goes into being really good at this game. And honestly, I think that that's a good turn. We've had enough of the cutesy Pokemon style Mon games, the high graphic AAA looking things, and I'm not talking about Scarlet and Violet, but I'm just saying, like, we've had enough of that. It is cool to see one that wants to really take that genre in a different direction and to maybe challenge players, to add some depth to it. Maybe even to have a game where, you could talk about it amongst friends. I'm not saying you can't talk about Pokemon in front of your friends, but let's just say, if you're at a party and someone says, oh, you play games, Pokemon is usually not the first one you go to if you're a man in your 30s. Not to say that we should be ashamed. Hell, I think it's weird that you see a lot of people being judged for wearing Pokemon shirts, even though we grew up with that. Like, that's our childhood. And yet you see, like, older people with, like, Mickey Mouse shirts. Like, why is that okay? What, because Pikachu isn't anti-Semitic? It's not cool to wear his garb of some sort? I mean, what, is it like a dog whistle of some sort? Hey, man, you rock with Mickey Mouse? Z-Kyle, bro. Like, is that what's going on? I am really glad I am not monetized, because I would be complaining about this being demonetized. Anyway, I know it went off the tracks towards the end, but that is basically Siralim Ultimate, and I really do like it. I think it's really cool. It has a definite place in my library, but again, I think it's one of those games that is probably going to be one that, for its $20 price tag, you're going to get either a lot out of it, or you're going to get frustrated really early. And not to say that, again, it doesn't offer accessibility. It really does. But I don't know if you would enjoy it. If you would, how do I put it? If you're going to get your bang for your buck, if you're going to get what the game is really about, if you just throw it on super easy and just blast through the game, maybe you will. Maybe that's, what you want to do. You just want to explore this kind of simple world. But knowing that there's so much more under the hood, there's so much more depth if you just scratch a little bit, I think that's a little bit more, worth your time and money. But that's just me. And I'm kind of curious if you guys have heard of it, if you're interested in it. All of your comments down below would be very, very much appreciated. But like always, guys, I'm wishing you health, wealth, and above all, I hope you're truly happy, because you make me happy. So this is just bonus outside, past the review kind of stuff. But anyway, I'm hoping to make another 2 or 3 videos before the end of the year, or before Christmas. I'm sorry. I'm going to continue. We're not taking any really long breaks, but I have said I have family in town, and here's something fun. I only have 2 or 3 days to record this week, and I'm sick. Yeah, like a sinking ship. The insides of my body are trying to leave in every possible route. So if you did hear me wince a lot in this, or there's a lot of it's heavily edited, that's why. Because I'm dying. I've got some sort of stomach flu or something that has caused me to puke like 4 times in the last hour, which is awesome. Anyway, guys, I do appreciate you. I really do. But I'm going to try to keep these videos coming out and everything else. And if you stayed this long, man, you are an OG. You are awesome, and I love you. Bye-bye.